presentation. I'd like you all to welcome our first speaker, Mr. Johan Vasara, to come and speak to us today. Thank you.
Lugihtu, Boridi ja Borispohtin teistä, tämän lokaltellani Saami rektoruudanen. Thank you, and good morning, and welcome everybody to this presentation about the Sami people's rights and management of land and natural resources and the World Heritage Laponia. My name is Johan Vasara. I'm a political advisor for Mr. Egil Olli, the president of the Sami Parliament in Norway. Together with me today, I got Mr. Johan here. He's a senior advisor in the administration of the Sami Parliament. And Ms. Åsa Jonsson from the Laponia management, the World Heritage in Swedish Lapland. They will get the floor later on today. And I will start by saying a few words about, in general, about the Sami people and how we are organized. Now let me see how this fancy thing works. The Sami are one of many Arctic indigenous peoples. Other indigenous peoples related to the Sami are the Inuit in the west, and the Nenets and Komis in the east. Russia. The Sami settlement area is called Sámi. And the word actually comes from the land. The land's name is Sámi, and we as Samis belong to the land after the name. The Sami land stretches from the Kola Peninsula in the northeast to Angerdal in South Norway. It should be all the way, here, southern parts of Sweden and Norway. The Samis are a minority in numbers in all 4 national states. But in central Sámi, the Samis are in majority. These areas marked in the top of the map. In our area, being an indigenous people means that Samis inhabited the Nordic region at the time of the establishment of the present state's boundaries, and that the Samis has retained our own social, economic, culture, and political institutions. Self-identification as indigenous is also regarded as a fundamental criteria for determining our status. The Samis live in 4 national states, as you can see: Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia. The Sami has common languages, culture, and tradition. We also have common national symbols, as the Sami flag, a national day, a national anthem, as well as religious symbols that are common in all the region. The Sami flag, as you can see here, is also common to all Sami, regardless of which country they live in. The flag was adopted 15th of August 1986 by the 13th Nordic Sami Conference, and was designed by Astrid Ball from a village in Troms, Norway. The principal motive is taken from the magic drum and from the poet Baby, written by a South Sami, Anders Fjellner, who lived from 1795 to 1876. In the poem, Fjellner presents the Sami people as the sons and daughters of the sun. The circle is a sun and moon symbol, a sun and moon symbol. The sun half of the circle is red and the moon half is blue. And the flag contains the typical Sami colors: red, green, yellow, and blue. And we have flag days as for the National Day, 6th of February, August 9th, the National Day of Indigenous Peoples, and October 9th, the Sami Parliament, which was opened in 1989. in Norway. Sami is a part of a Finno-Ugric language group. The closest related language is Finnish, and the language area is not uniform and can be divided into different language groups. Some choose to call language groups main dialects. These language groups could just as well be regarded as different languages. There is no exact register of number of Sami-speaking people today. Based on reports from, for example, 1999, there are an estimated 23,000 Sami-speaking people in Norway. And in addition, there are also Sami-speaking people in Sweden, Finland, and Russia, of course. The oldest written material in Sami is a list of 95 words and expressions, which in 1557 were committed to paper on the Kola Peninsula by English sea captain Stephen Burrows, who, after being shipwrecked, was forced to live a couple of months among the Kola Sami people in Russia. And you can see all the language where they are located geographically. North Sami today is the biggest, some 90% of us speak North Sami language. Here you got what we want to avoid, conflicts. This picture is from the famous Sami hunger striker, Mr. Negda's zombie, outside the Norwegian Parliament building. The conflict over the damming of the Alta River began as early as the 1970s, when the development plans were submitted for the first time. The plans affected vital Sami territory, and among other things involved the submergence of 200 people's homes in the Sami village of Maadze. In 1973, following by massive protests, a resolution was passed granting permanent protection of the village of Maadze. But November 13th, 1978, the Norwegian Parliament passed a plan for the river with a dam. The decision led to extensive protests from the Samis and environmentalists. The movement against the development of the Alta River was created. In October 1979, a group of Sami underwent a hunger strike at the little square just outside the Norwegian Parliament. These demonstrations led to a suspension of the development work. After a district court gave judgment that construction had been lawfully begun, work resumed in January 1981, triggering a new campaign. Protests were stopped by police action. A group of Sami underwent a hunger strike from 24th of January to 25th of February. The hunger strike led to suspension of construction work once again, but resumed in September 1981 without major interruption. In 1982, the Supreme Court ruled that the development was legal. We lost the dam project on the Alta-Kautokeino waterway, but the case speeded up the Sami rights issue in Norway. The Sami rights struggle received enormous attention in the media in connection with the dam project, and the government appointed two committees to study Sami rights and cultural issues: the Sami Rights Committee and the Sami Culture Committee. The Sami Rights Committee submitted its first part recommendation in 1984, which formed the basis for a resolution in 1987 on a separate Sami Act, and thus the establishment of the Sami Parliament. The Norwegian Parliament passed the new Article 110A of the Constitution in 1998. And the Sami Parliament was officially opened 9th of October 1989 in Kárášjohka by His Majesty King Olaf V. And the ILO Convention 169 on Indigenous and Tribal Peoples was ratified by Norway in 1990. So only in a few years we had a major leap regarding Sami rights issues in Norway. The Sami Parliament is elected by and among Samis at the Sámediggi election, Sami Parliament election, which is held every 4th year. The Sami Parliament has 39 representatives from 7 electoral districts. And a fact is that you can actually see from their dresses where they're from. The dress is telling which region you are from. The Sami Parliament is the highest electoral authority at the Sami Parliament election. Those entitled to vote in the Sami Parliament elections are Samis who have reached the age of 18 during the election year, and who also consider themselves as Sami and can show to a Sami language heritage back to at least your grandparents. I will stop here and pass the floor to Jon Petter. He will go in more details on how the Sami Parliament in Norway engages in management of land and natural resources. So, kiihtu ejanautas ja Sámediggi ain Guovdageaidnu. So I thank for myself and I wish you a good day.
Thank you, Johan, and hello, everybody. My name is Jon Petter Gintal, and I work in the administration of the Sami Parliament, the Department for Rights and International Affairs. The staff of the Sami Parliament in Norway are now around 130 persons. Most of them are Sami people, and many of them, of course, work with Sami language and educational issues. And the administration of the elections of the Sami Parliament and preparation for plenary sessions. Members of the Sami Parliament meet normally 4 to 5 times a year to make decisions. We have a Sami Parliament building in Kárášjohka. It's a village in the innermost area of Finnmark County, where many Sami lives. It's a majority Sami village and municipality. We are also around 15 people who work with Sami rights, traditional knowledge, and who are working together with other indigenous peoples at relevant international levels in the UN and in the Arctic Council and in the Barents Cooperation. And of course, the Sami people, we need people, knowledge and resources and budget to develop as indigenous peoples, nations, to overcome their entire task. We are building capacity in the Sami society. In the Sami area, we have many strong institutions and organizations. I can shortly mention the Sami Skola, the Sami University College. We have our own Sami radio and TV, Sami media, newspapers, Sami museums and other Sami institutions, Sami organizations and Sami festivals, music festivals, and we have our own national Sami theater. In this presentation I will focus on how the Sami Parliament deal with different decisions which may affect both biodiversity and the Sami people, particularly in protected areas. The main tool for the Sami Parliament to get in a position to negotiate with the government in Norway are an agreement on consultation procedures between state authorities and the Sami Parliament from 2005. The consultation agreement applies in cases that may directly affect the Sami people. Norway recognizes the Sami people as indigenous people by ratifying the ILO Convention number 69 on indigenous people and tribal peoples in 1999. And the consultation agreement on consultations are based on the ILO Convention 69. The first time there was an agreement that actually consultations were taking place was during the process leading to the Finnmark Act in Northern Norway in 2005. The background for the Finnmark Act was the Sami people's fights for their rights to own and manage their land, waters and culture, as Johan showed earlier about the conflict about the Guovdageaidnu river. The Finnmark Act transferred 46,000 square kilometers of an area in Finnmark County from the state to the inhabitants of Finnmark. The size of this land is the same size as the Kingdom of Denmark. The area now is managed by the Finnmark State Agency. The Finnmark State Agency got a board of directors with 6 members. 3 of these are appointed by the Sami Parliament and 3 by the Finnmark County Council. The purpose of the Act is to facilitate the management of land and natural resources in a balanced and ecological sustainable manner, particularly as a basis for Sami culture, reindeer husbandry and the use of non-cultivated areas. The Finnmark Act established the Finnmark Commission, which investigates rights of use and ownership to the land in Finnmark. A special court shall be established, which shall consider disputes concerning rights that arises after the Finnmark Commission has investigated a field. This year, the Finnmark Commission presented their first 2 reports from 2 fields. So this work is taking a lot of time, and they will soon, later this year, establish the special court who will judge and come up with a final solution on who got the right to use and own land in Finnmark. And the Sami Parliament has an ongoing process and consultation with the government of Norway on 3 acts who will deal with Sami rights for the rest of the Sami area in Norway, the area outside Finnmark. And hopefully we will reach an agreement within the next 4 years election period. But we are not sure. We have still many challenges in those consultations, but we are in a process now, and that's good. Resources area, the diversity of nature, cultural monuments and the landscape comprise an important part of the material basis for Sami culture. The management of areas, nature and cultural heritage is therefore important to ensure the basis for preserving and developing Sami culture. So the Sami Parliament is making efforts to ensure that cultural monuments and cultural landscapes are preserved and used as a basis for Sami identity and culture and social developments. Cultural monuments must be managed as a source of historical material. And we make efforts to ensure that the diversity of nature, which is biological, landscape and geological diversity and ecological processes, is safeguarded through sustainable use and protection. Also, so that it provides a basis for Sami culture and for the next generation. The Sami Parliament is an administrative agency pursuant to the Norwegian Cultural Heritage Act and the Norwegian Plan and Building Act. Every Sami artifact in Norway who is older than 100 years are automatically protected by the Norwegian Cultural Heritage Act, and the Sami Parliament has the management of the Sami artifacts and cultural heritage in Norway. The Norwegian Nature Diversity Act provision are to be considered in the case of any decision which may affect the diversity of nature. The Act aims, among other things, to ensure the basis for Sami culture. Also based administration on Sami traditional knowledge, and place emphasis on nature as a basis for Sami culture in all measures implemented pursuant to the Act. The Sami Parliament and the Ministry of Environment in Norway held consultation and reached agreement on the new Nature Diversity Act. The Act came in force in 2009. The Sami Parliament and the Norwegian Ministry of Environment also held consultation and achieved consensus on an agreement on separate consultation guidelines for protected area in 2007. The object of these guidelines is to ensure that consultation is connection with any proposal concerning protected areas in the Sami Land, and ought to take place in good faith and with the goal of achieving agreement among the Norwegian state on the one hand, and the Sami Parliament, Sami interest group, and Sami rights holders on the other hand. As you know, half of the world's protected areas are established in areas where indigenous peoples live. This is also the case in the Nordic region. State protected areas have been a controversial issue ever since the first national park were established in North America at the end of the 19th century. Yellowstone is the world's first national park, established in 1872 in the US. In Europe, Sweden was the first country to introduce national parks when it established Sarek and Stora Sjöfallet National Park, among others, in the Lule Sami area in 1909. Rondane in the South Sami area became Norway's first national park when it was established in 1962. Of 35 national parks established on mainland Norway, 20 of them are in the Sami area. So the Sami Parliament and Norwegian Ministry of Environment held consultation and reached agreements on the introduction of local protected area boards, which ensure Sami participation. We reached that agreement in 2010. The protected area boards are elected by the municipality council, country council, and Sami Parliament. The level of Sami representation is considered based on the area's importance to Sami culture and business. The Ministry of Environment and Sami Parliament hold consultation to determine the composition and Sami representation for each individual park board in the Sami area. The protected area boards are to administer the protected areas according to the frameworks stipulated in agreed protection regulations, as well in the Nature Diversity Act's provisions. One important task for the various boards is to prepare or revise management plans for the protected areas. The Sami Parliament works to ensure that the traditional Sami usage is maintained and developed in such way that it preserves the diversity of nature. This takes place through contact and consultation with state environmental authorities. The Sami Parliament is currently working on regulation on the protection of areas in national park, landscape conservation and nature reserves. We work, as I said, with establishment of protected area boards and the establishment of management plans for national parks. I will also brief mention the new fisheries legislation in Norway from 2012. The new fisheries legislation endorsed by the Sami Parliament consists of three main elements that are intended to ensure the Sami rights and access to fisheries resources. The Act confirms that individuals who live in the traditional Sami territory are entitled to fish using vessels less than 11 meters in length. The Act further states that in the traditional Sami territory, all regulation of fisheries resources should put significant emphasis on Sami usage and its importance for local Sami communities. Moreover, it has been established by regulation that fishing from vessels more than 15 meters in length is prohibited. Because it's been a problem that big vessel has come into to small fjords close to Sami community and empty the fjords with overfishing in a short period. So now that type of boats are prohibited. All in all, the new fisheries legislation gives the Sami the right to traditional fuel fishing, access to fisheries resources, and the right to make service in connection with the recognition of any exclusive right to fishing grounds. And we also got the possibility to participate in fisheries management. It's soon going to be establish a board who will deal with fisheries management in outside the Sami traditional area. I will also briefly mention that we work on regulations on traditional Sami spring duck hunting in Guovdageaidnu, a Sami municipality in the northern part of Norway. We are close to reach an agreement with the government that that tradition can continue, but we have still a minor disagreement about how many birds can be shot during the spring. But hopefully we'll have a final agreement soon. It's just around the corner. We are also in consultation about regulation on the control of salmon fishing in seas and rivers in the Sami traditional area. It's a problem in some Sami rivers that we are getting less salmon who's going up to the river. So then we have to do some management, not to fish too many salmon in the seas and maybe take it down in the rivers. But from our perspective, also the sport fisher have to reduce the fishing, not only the Sami people. So I guess we will have an agreement also on the salmon fishing. So we are currently working on that. And we have, this is a bigger disagreement we have with the state, is the management of the reindeer husbandry. So they made a decision in 2012, we couldn't agree on the decision from the Sami Parliament's side and from the reindeer herders' side. So the Norwegian Ministry of Agriculture and Food will not allow the Sami people to participate in the management of reindeer husbandry in a proper way. And that's not good, because reindeer husbandry is an exclusive right for Sami people in Norway. You have to be a Sami people if you will be in that business. So we can't understand why they don't want the Sami people to participate in the management. But we have the Sami Parliament is working on a way to come around the decision in the government and to continue with our own management for reindeers. It's also a discussion how to bring down the number of reindeer in the Finnmark County, where it's too many reindeers in the land. But that's a more complex issue, and we are in a dialogue with the state about that. And we also are working to improve the management of predators population in reindeer districts. That was all from me, and now I pass the mic to Åsa and the Laponia management. Thanks for the attention.
Or I go ahead without the presentation. I think there will be some questions I'd like to take out. And thank you very much, Peter. And I will jump over to the Swedish part and the Laponia World Heritage Area. I am the head of the Laponia Management Organization, and the organization is pretty young. We established it in the last fall, so I have been in work for about a half a year. Yes, from there. And here you can see the Laponia World Heritage Area, and it consists of 4 national parks, Sarek and Stora Sjöfallet, which were established at 1909, and Padjelanta and Muddus. They are established around the 1950s, and then we have Sjaunja and Muddus Nature Reserve. And in this area, the Sami people have just been allowed to grazing the reindeers during the summer. They haven't been allowed to do the hunting and to use the Reindeer Act in other ways. They have just been allowed to grazing the reindeers during the summers. In the east part, we also have reindeers grazing during the winter time. During the summer, there is around 65,000 reindeers in this area. And it's about 83% of all protected area in Sweden is up in this Laponia World Heritage today. And Laponia became a World Heritage at 1996 after a long process. They actually started the process in 1985, and then they only wanted to have Sjaunja, the nature reserve, as a World Heritage. But I can most say that wasn't enough, because the nature wasn't enough just to have as a World Heritage. And then they started to think what to do to get the whole area as a World Heritage. and the item was that you have to include the Sami culture. And in 1996 they chose to include Sami culture into the World Heritage nomination, and then Sweden got the World Heritage. And the nomination text is that the committee considered that the site is of an outstanding universal value as it contains examples of ongoing geological, biological and ecological processes, a great variety of natural phenomena of exceptional beauty and significant biological diversity, including a population of brown bear and the alpine flora. It was noted that the site meets all conditions and integrative. The site has been occupied continuously by the Sami people since prehistoric times. It's one of the last unquestioned largest and best preserved examples of an area of transhumance involving Sami grazing by long reindeer herds, a practice that was widespread at one time and which dates back to an early stage in human economics and social development. And the fact that the Sami culture were included in the nomination text and also in the World Heritage became very important for Sami people when they started to talk about the management of the area. From the Swedish side, it wasn't so clear, so they thought they were going to continue to manage the area as they always had done, but the Sami people didn't accept that at all. So adding the Sami culture was the key factor to get their area to the World Heritage, and that's something the Sami people have used since the 1996 to get the influence over the management for the area. And so as I said, some part of Laponia have been protected since 1910 through national park legislation. According to national park legislation, the Sami have the right to use the area for grazing areas, but not to do anything else, not to hunt, and the hunting have been very important for some Sami groups. So the Sami people haven't been allowed to hunt in this area. So at 1996, when Laponia became nominated to the World Heritage, where Sami culture was very important, the situation changed. The Sami communities in the area asked themselves, why shouldn't we be responsible for the management? Because we have managed it for generations. Why shouldn't we do that in the future? Why don't they trust us in our way to manage the area? And the Swedish society and the county of administration in Norrbotten, who was not aware about the Sami people, wanted to be involved in the management. And for the county administration, they thought that they could manage the area as they always has done. And the Swedish state and the Sami people, they had really different ideas about how to manage the area. And according to the World Heritage legislation, there must be a management plan, and the county administration, they worked out their own management plan, but the Sami people couldn't accept that. So at 1995 to 1997, we had the first working group, and it consists of the Sami communities, the Aitek, Mountain and Sami Museum, and the municipalities, and the county of administrations. And they started to talk how they should manage the area, but they couldn't find any solution. So after 1 year, I decided to split up the group and to work on their own management plan. And after that, they should sit down and try to have common from the different ideas. But it didn't work out at all. They become a lot of conflicts instead. And the county administration, they went on with their own management plan, and both the municipalities and the Sami community said we can't accept this plan. We had to do the work in another way. Why should the county administration decide how the area should be managed? And the Sami community, they started to work on their own management plan, which involved 4 different areas. They were talking about our land and our life, and they said the Sami people have been living here for generations. The Sami people have always welcomed others to the area, but will have the possibility to develop the culture and living circumstances in the area as they always have done. They will, in the plan, they also said that they will be a fully integrated part in decisions that affect them. They also said that preserve and develop the land from a Sami perspective was very important, because that's why the landscape looked like it did, like it does today. They also said that the living Sami culture is important in this area, and the Sami culture must be present even in the future. The traditional way of living must still be a possibility for the Sami in the area, and it should also be possible to develop the living ways. But they also said it should be new ways of living, because today all Sami could not live on reindeer herding, and that was important to say that other Sami should have possibility to live on tourism, on fishing, information, etc. And they also said the Sami culture in the families and the language are keys to the identity, and that also was the reflect the management plan. They were also talking about the preserve and develop sustainability in this area. When they first started to talk about the preserve from the Swedish state, the Sami people were afraid that they were not allowed to develop their own culture and living any longer. So they said that we should not be preserved as a museum. We should have the right to develop our own culture and reindeer herding as we want. And they also said the Sami people have been living on what nature gives through generation. And that the Sami people also said in the plan that the traditional values are the only way to manage the area if it should continue to be managed in a sustainable way. And that was also very important that the management should be with the Sami majority. That was something that's from 1996 until 2011, one of the main topics that come back all the time, that the Sami should be in the majority in the board. And from the beginning, the county administration had hard to accept that. At 2003, the county administration of Norrbotten, they presented a new management plan, but the Sami people couldn't still accept it. Because what happened during 2003, the county administration invited a person from ICAMUS. They also invited people from the Swedish government, and they took a helicopter ride up into the area and should evaluate it. And the Sami people questioned that decision and said, why haven't you invited us? Because we have been living in there for such a long time, so why aren't we invited to the helicopter ride? And the representatives from the county administration said, yeah, but we met some people when we landed in the mountain region. But I said that's not enough, and that's not enough just to meet us. We should be invited from the beginning to be a part when you are discussing how to manage the area. So then there was a lot of conflicts during 2003 and 2004. At some point, the different parts didn't actually talk to each other. At 2005, something happened. The county administration, they realized that they need to have the Sami with them if there should be a way to manage the area and to have a management plan for the area. So in 2006, the different parts, the county administration, the Sami communities, the municipalities, and the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency sat down and started to discuss how to manage the area. And it became a very long process, called the Laponian process. There were 60 meetings between the different parts. There were only about 80 meetings for the Sami people, where they sat down and discussed how to manage the area. Total around 80% were involved in this process, and what came out from the process, there was a new management plan, a new management organization called Laponian Tutsidus. There were new laws and regulations and legislations, So today the Sami people have the right to use the national parks for hunting and fishing, and that's something very new. And they also had the Sami majority in the board of the new organization. So at August 2011, the parks could accept this management plan, and they started to work with a new organization and everything you had to think about to do when you start a new regulation. In Sweden, this is something new, that you open up the national park for reindeer herders and allow them to hunt in the parks. It's also something new in Sweden to let the local organization like Laponia with Sami people in the majority and also Sami people in the office to take responsibility for management. And Sweden, they have done like this, like a trial period. So this new organization, management organization, will be evaluated at 2014. And then we have to prove that we can manage it in a better way than the Swedish state can do. Otherwise, it will go back like before. And so that's the situation today, and I think I will stop there. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Åsa. We have some minutes left. If you have questions to me or Jon Petter or Åsa, just feel free to come with them. Okay, we're back.
I noticed that you cover 3 different countries.
We are from 2 different countries, from Norway and Sweden.
Yeah, but the Sami cover your area, traditional area, cover
4 countries.
4 countries.
Finland and Russia.
Yeah.
In addition.
So you have relations with all of those countries in terms of your negotiations and for your own country. Did you have agreements with different countries? And I noticed on your website, what I do with you while we're talking, you get your majority of funding from Norway for your government. Do the other countries contribute to your funding of your parliament?
The main funding for the Norwegian Sami Parliament, or the Sami Parliament in Norway, as we prefer to call it, comes from the Norwegian government.
Yeah.
But the budget we allocated ourselves within our own decisions.
And you allocate that across your whole traditional country, or just in Norway?
That's in Norway for the Norwegian. There are also Sami parliaments in Sweden and in Finland, elected by the Swedish Sami people.
Yeah.
And
they're funded by the Swedish government?
Yes.
Okay.
Shortly.
Thank you.
And you got one?
That was a similar question, but the 4 countries, and, when they talk, do you have a common agenda? Do you, what's the commonality between? I mean, other than that, I'm not talking about the cultural commonality, I'm talking about the administrative practicality of working together.
Förstår du spörsmålet?
Sillet om Samis parlamentariska råd.
Okay. Well, we are, in addition to the 3 separate Sami parliaments in the 3 countries, Norway, Sweden, and Finland, we also have a common Sami parliamentarian council, which has representatives from all the Sami parliaments. And the decisions made there are mainly the principal decisions about core issues that regard us as people in the 4 countries. The Russian Samis are also represented there, but since they don't have any parliament in the Russian Sami side of Kola Peninsula, they are represented with an organization, the Russia Sami Sobar organization, in that council, common council.
And in your own country, do you consider line budget, and you allocate your own funds, but is it a set line every year?
And,
you get a set amount, percentage?
Man spør om budsjettet, hvordan blir det, og det er et problem.
That's one of our main issues today, because the budget, we have no influence on how it's going to be the next year. And it's all up to the parties in the Norwegian government to decide how much they would like to give to the Sami Parliament. And that gives us, of course, very little chance to develop our own societies. We have kindergarten, schools, educational stuff, agricultural reindeer herder projects and everything that depend on how much the Norwegian government gives to the Sami Parliament. So, yeah. Let me see, there were some few hands. You first.
Does the Sami Parliament run parallel to the state Parliament of Norway, or the Sami Parliament is subordinate to the state Parliament of Norway?
We don't have any sovereignty like that. We are elected by and among the Sami people fully, and the Sami Parliament is the highest for the Sami Parliament elections. So in that way, we are separate from the Norwegian Parliament. The elections are at the same day as the Norwegian Parliament elections to the Sami Parliament.
I was curious because I was invited by the Sami Parliament to attend next week's World Council of Indigenous Peoples preparatory conference in Alta. But I was asked to go to the Norwegian embassy to
Yeah.
There was no Sami
No.
consul or no.
All foreign issues are taken care of the Norwegian government and the Norwegian embassies. Yeah. Over there.
What's the extent of the powers of the Sami Parliament? Can you legislate for Sami issues or?
We have no legislative power. We can't pass through acts and such things. But the Sami Parliament has authority in issues concerning education, the cultural heritage, as Jon Petter mentioned earlier, and monetary, economic influence, availability to influence in many areas. And also, of course, after many years, we have also gotten ourselves some symbolic power in the Norwegian, yeah.
It's also a point that we influence the Norwegian legislation through the consultation agreement, because we sit around the table and try to agree on legislation that influence some people. And normally it works well. We have agreement, but we have some disagreement on the new Mineral Act.
So the Sami Parliament is taken very seriously by.
Yeah, it's putting down in an act that they need to consultate with them. So they contact us when they coming up with an issue or decision or legislation that may affect some people.
After the ideals of the free, prior, and informed consent of international standards.
What's the long-term objective that the Sami are looking at? Are you looking towards going down as a sovereign peoples, as recognised as a country through the UN permanent forums from those 4 different countries that you're engaging with at the moment? What's your long-term goal that you're looking at? So it seems like you've got some really good things happening within your own parliament. So I've never heard of that. Like a parliament inside a country that has another parliament. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a really good concept because it does give you a lot of impetus in those areas, and you can negotiate your lobbying tools like your economics and your education and your national parks and your heritage areas and those things like that. But where do you want to get to?
That's a returning question. It comes to us all the time, mainly from the critics for the Sami rights, who are against the Sami rights. There are no goals of establishing a state, a Sami state, because that would be impossible to handle. We kind of see that. But there is, in the long-term goal, a goal to have bigger self-governance over the lands of the Sami traditional areas, especially concerning in areas that affect the Sami people life. There you have reindeer husbandry, for example, and fisheries. So, yeah.
So you're not, what Greg was saying is that you don't have a long-term aspiration for sovereignty in India, but do you have some type of aspiration for maybe independent domestic sovereignty within those nations, controlling, you know, a lot of those things that you're talking about, because I know that in Canada and America they've got the independent domestic sovereignty within the First Nations and stuff like that. Would you be maybe interested into that point where, because you're saying it's impossible to have the sovereignty over your lands, but you held sovereignty over your lands, you know, at some time. So yeah, and just curious, like, because my people, where I come from, I'm in Australia, and we've just declared our independence through sovereignty, and we're asking the question of the Crown to provide the documents to us to say where they've taken away our sovereignty dominion as well. We've just elected a People's Council of our lot to take the process further. And I'm very, very interested in your guidance and how we would now learn from you in terms of establishing what we see are our sovereign rights within our own sovereign country, and our rights as the first peoples of this nation. Because let's face it, since 1788, we've had no rights in our country. Our government is just starting to talk to us about things like that. And other issues they don't talk to us, and we're finding it very difficult even to get to a stage where the Australian government will sign a treaty with the Aboriginal people of this country, the first peoples of this country, because at 3 stages since the 1970s, they got to a situation where treaties were being developed, and the Australian government pulled out because of those issues. And I think that it would be very interesting to talk later on about how you achieved your parliament and what legislative power, what powers do you have in your parliament as well. So yeah.
Yeah, those are really, really complicated questions you ask.
I don't
That would be worth another lecture.
Yeah.
10 minutes left. Yeah.
I just wanted to know what the competing interests were from, is it a Norwegian state, the industries or the agriculture, that why they're so adamant to be a part of the management plans? Is it like extractive industries or other type of agriculture or fisheries that companies that they're...
Kanske du kan svara på den?
I'm not sure if I got your question, but
I'm just wondering what the other competing interests were, like in the negotiations, like is it they want to access the resources in the land, like the mineral resources?
And of course that's the main challenge, especially now the latest year when we have this new policy in Norway, the High North policy, and we see more exploring of oil and gas, mineral industry, and of course we have other industry who's been around there for centuries, so we have to deal with. But there is competition about land, so that's what we are working now. And Norway, the Sami people in Norway are lucky because Norway ratified the Longterm convention, and then we can have a claim with a deal with the land rights. So we have a process on that, and of course, when you are the landowner, it's easier to stop other to go into your area and do harm.
So, one question.
This is for Åsa. I've got hundreds of questions, but I'm just really interested in the World Heritage process, and 2014 seems really soon to be expected to probably achieve a whole heap of things. Do you feel that you have got enough support and that there are sort of realistic expectations around what can be delivered in that time?
In the board, we have the company organization so we are working to extend it to 2016. So because we are all, only have 2 years and can't do so much in 2 years, so we are working to have a period extended to 2016.
Sorry. Continue here, but is there any literature in English about your parliamentary model?
Yeah, but it's
your
all
government?
website.
Okay.
Yeah, we got your answer.
I'll read it.
Okay, any further? Yeah, back there.
I'm just curious about the capacity of the parliaments or parliaments to generate their own incomes, either through land use or other commercial activity that I guess I presume the states would relinquish for the benefit of the parliaments.
That's also a very complicated question. How do I put the history in 30 seconds? There has been demands from many Sami political environments asking for or looking to additional incomes for the Sami Parliament. That isn't a big discussion today in the Sami Parliament, but I can easily see that one coming if we if we get to experience large cuts on the Sami budget. Until today, it has only been growing the budget, so we have gone a positive direction with the Sami Parliament budget. But if we start to go back and our institutions, from kindergartens to land budget centers to schools and everything, start to take harm from those budget cuts, it may arise as a discussion in the Sami Parliament.
In 2005, when we had an agreement on consultation, the agreement didn't cover the state budget, consultation about the budget. And the state promised us then, we have it in a protocol, that they will come back to us to find a solution on that, and they were willing to deal with that later. But time is going and we are still waiting for a good solution on the state budget. But also when we had the disagreement on the Mineral Act, that was one point that some of the income from the mineral industry will go directly to the Sami people, to the Sami Parliament, and down to directly influence the local Sami communities. But the government couldn't do that for us, so that's why we had the disagreement. And today we have a couple of projects and we are just opposing them, so nothing is happening yet.
Couldn't or won't?
I'm sorry?
Couldn't or won't deal with it, the government?
I don't know.
Maybe both.
It is very interesting because I've written some stuff about you here, and one of the speeches to the Sami Parliament, I think one Parliament, you're using Resolution 1514 of the United Nations Decolonisation Resolution in the United Nations, which is 1952. And there is also such a thing as internal decolonisation as well. So it's saying through the United Nations, through that resolution, it talks about decolonising the African states from the British colonies and colonial systems. And so there's scope for decolonisation within the country. So internal decolonisation as well, so that the indigenous peoples of those countries need to be decolonised from the state that's over the top of them. And it's very interesting. Reading some of the information that's in here and your presentation, so you've got, you know, in terms of World Heritage areas, your culture, your connection to your country as well, and yeah, it seems to me that there's progress there. There needs to be a few other steps taken in terms of the internal decolonisation of the Sami people in those 4 different countries, and your self-determination as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, we have, especially at Sami youth conferences, that's a very usual topic, the internal decolonization. 5 minutes left, okay.
I just want to ask about property rights. In terms of fisheries, I imagine the fisheries were fully quoted, and you then acquired some rights, so somehow you got some property rights there. But also in terms of minerals, do you just get royalties or do you have actual property rights?
There are no royalties from mineral extraction for the Sami people. There are some systems for the municipalities to get royalties from through taxes from the
So
industries.
how would you come to get some minerals?
What we are doing, after the disagreement that the Sami Parliament made our own decision, how shall we deal with directly with the mineral companies? So we negotiate with them, and then we say yes or no, and if we say no, you're not allowed to come here, then we say you must respect this, if not, we're gonna make everything to get you out of our land. So
Is that similar to fisheries?
no, fishery, that's a tougher story. We don't have the same tools to deal with that when it comes to the right to fish. It's easier on that.
The Fisheries Act that Jon Petter was mentioned earlier, there was this committee that clearly said that the Samis have historical rights to the fjords in Norway, Northern Norway. But when the white paper came from the government, it said nothing about historical Sami rights. So, and that was adopted in the Norwegian Parliament.
And it's hard to find argumentation for exclusive rights in international laws. So it's easier now.
But that said, the Norwegian government did argument with historical rights against Great Britain in the 60s or 50s or so to get the rights to the fisheries in the Norwegian Sea. So those rights doesn't seem to exist anymore for the Samis.
But for Norway, it's three different industries that's important. It's oil and gas, of course, and it's the fisheries, and it's the fish farming, salmon fish farming. We see some problem now with fish farming. It's coming more and more in north and closer to the Whitehall Saami area. So that's something we will have a challenge for the future on.
You don't farm fish yourself?
I'm sorry?
You don't do any fish farming yourself?
No, it's maybe a couple, but it's one big guy who's have most of the fish farming in Norway, and he's also in Canada and Chile. So they are worldwide big.
Okay. We'll set them.
One last one.
One more.
What is the population of Sami in total, roughly?
We have no ethnic registers on how many we are due to some historical, logical reasons with the Second World War and the European histories and how they deal with minorities. That's one main reason why we don't count Samis by ethnic. But we have we used to say between 80,000 and 150,000 maybe, somewhere there.
And in your schools and your kindergartens and so forth, are you doing cultural knowledge transmissions of your sovereign peoples, of your histories, and where you are in the political agendas and teaching all those types of things internally for the next generation?
That differs from country to country,
Yeah.
through the Nordic countries and Russia. But mainly, I can speak for the Norwegian side. The curriculums in Norway has that as an important part. For the Sami pupils, of course, but now we're also going to consultations with the Ministry of Knowledge in Norway about having that for all Norwegian pupils. and in all schools, because we depend on the knowledge in the majority people to have a goodwill to Sami issues in the future. But we experience that most don't know anything about the Samis. We live in Lagos, tipis, and are up north somewhere with a Norwegian.
That's like us, we used to run around in laptops and with the spears. It was actually taught in England that we were still running around in laptops and spears in 1983.
Yeah, a romantic way of seeing indigenous
Romantic way of
people.
seeing the
Yeah.
indigenous people. And that's the way we were portrayed in schools. And that's the way that the English people were actually learning about us. And even up until 1975, when I was going to school, we were still learning about Aboriginal people being those people, the so-called nomadic people of Australia. And here I am sitting in the classroom, watching a white teacher explain Aboriginality to me, where I live it, and I've been living it for all that life, you know. And it's not until the 1970s that stuff started changing in Australia in terms of educating who Aboriginal people are as well. So, yeah, we're all on the same page, I suppose, in that sense.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No, one last one, sorry.
Okay, one quick one.
Oh, it's really quick. I think, Johan Vasara, you said before that there's 15 people that are working to support the Sami Parliament. How can you negotiate with all these different mining companies? How can you be, negotiating with the government, consulting with the government around all these different legislation? And it just seems to me that that's not enough. I'm just wondering how you can strengthen that or grow, what your plans are to grow that, and also if there are other strong Sami advocacy groups around.
Yeah, we have, of course, other institutions, as I mentioned, who's strong and who helps us, especially at the international level. We have the Sami Council, some organization for Sami associations all over the Sami area, and they have international lawyers, experts, so they help us a lot. And of course, when we have a big issues coming up, then we have to prioritize our resources to that issue. And if it's going to become a lot of negotiation with the mineral companies, then we have to say to the mineral companies, we have to help us out to negotiate. If not, they're going to stop up.
Okay, I thank you very much all for coming here and asking good questions, and we will be available for talks later also if you're interested.